Okay, so welcome to the General Awareness and Security Training for Hazmat Employees in Packaging. Starting off with the General Awareness Training. All right, so what are DOT regulations? DOT stands for the Department of Transportation. Beyond that, it is subject to the regulations of PHMSA, which is the Pipeline and Hazardous Material Administration. Their regulations are encased in a book called the CFR, or Code of Federal Regulations. The one that's relevant to the DOT and Greif is 49 CFR, and it contains all the regulations from what you would need in order to produce a steel drum, a plastic drum, in terms of construction requirements, as well as performance tests for how you would go about certifying that drum to a standard. It also contains information about how to classify dangerous goods and what is required to transport a particular material from one place to another. So our DOT regulations are based on a set of Model UN regulations, that's United Nations, and it is slightly tweaked and customized based on what country you find the regulations in. So what's a hazardous material? It's anything dangerous, long and short of it. It's really, when you think about a hazardous material, it's something that if it were to get out of its packaging, it would really harm somebody, property. Anything related to commerce would be impacted. 49 CFR has a big table of all these hazmats. It's 172-101 if you're ever interested. The material classes that we currently have in place today are 1 through 9, and they are individually identified by UN number. So we know exactly what class it is and what individually it is from a substance standpoint. Greif's packaging is everything liquids, solids, so everything but class 2, which would be something related to gases. What do we make? Greif was originally founded as a barrel manufacturer in 1877, so been in business for quite a while. As the packaging market has evolved and the technology available to move dangerous goods has evolved, we've started making steel drums, fiber drums, more recently plastic drums, jerry cans, and rigid intermediate bulk containers. We also make paperboard and corrugated products, as well as combination packagings. Packing groups. So every hazardous material found in the hazmat table I mentioned previously is broken down into 3 levels of hazard. Packing group 1 is a great hazard, packing group 2 is a medium hazard, and packing group 3 is a minor hazard. Some of the examples shown on the screen are some pretty nasty products, but the reality is that these things need to be moved, which is where Greif comes in. We make containers that can move all these varieties of products safely. Performance standards. So packing group correlates directly to X, Y, and Z when it comes to our packaging. We make X-rated packaging that meets packing group 1, 2, and 3 standards. So basically any sort of product can be moved in these highly rated packages. Y is for medium hazard products. So it's anything in packing group 2 and 3. And Z is for low hazard products only, meaning it can only be used in conjunction with packing group 3 products. So a little bit about the performance tests for drums and jerry cans. In order to mark our packaging as authorized for transporting these dangerous goods, we have to go through a series of performance tests for each design. Solid rated packaging has to go through drop tests as well as stack and compression tests. Liquids have to go through a few more tests. They need a drop test, stack test. They also have to undergo hydrostatic and leak proofness testing to make sure that they're adequately able to hold these products. All packaging is expected to be able to pass a vibration test as well. Each of the packaging designs must come with closing instructions to make sure that the end user knows how to properly close the package, and we are required to provide this upon receipt of the package. DOT also requires that we retest all of our single packaging designs once a year to make sure that they're still capable of passing the required performance tests. So a little bit more about performance tests for combination packaging, since they're a little bit different than single packagings. Combination packagings are primarily fiberboard boxes for Greif. They're relatively new to our portfolio. They most often contain inner plastic receptacles. The testing required is similar but not completely identical to single packagings. It includes drop testing, stack compression testing, hydrostatic pressure test if intended to be transported by air, as well as a cob test to check the water resistance of the outer cardboard box. They're also, again, expected to pass a vibration test. For these packagings, closing instructions need to be provided the same as with single packagings. DOT does require retests, but on a 2-year basis rather than annual. Okay, a little bit more about composite IBCs. So the type of composite IBCs Greif makes are known as 31HA1 IBCs. They are a steel outer cage with a plastic inner bottle. They're expected to go through 5 tests on container 1. The first of which is a vibration test, followed by a bottom lift, then a stack test, leak proofness, and ending with a hydrostatic pressure test. These tests have to be conducted in that order, and if failure occurs at any point, you have to start over. On the second container, it has to be identical. You conduct a cold drop at a 5-degree angle minimum on the front face. That has to be conducted with the package and its contents at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Getting into some details about manufacturer's symbols, the UN marking on a package is required to have a symbol for the manufacturer so the end user knows who made it. Greif symbols are different depending on where you are in the globe. So anywhere in the US and Canada, you'll see GBC on that packaging, whereas in other countries, Europe, Asia, Africa, you will see GEF. You may also see some different symbols. Occasionally, you'll have a plus followed by 2 letters. That indicates a symbol for a third-party lab. This is rare in our network, but just if you see it, that's what it means. Steel drums, the first type of industrial packaging that Greif produced after barrels was steel drums. They're one of the oldest types of industrial packaging when it comes to dangerous goods. The type that we make are constructed and tested to hold both solid and liquid dangerous goods. You'll notice the marking on steel drums always starts with 1A1 or 1A2, depending on if it's a tight head or an open top. So the letter A is what indicates that it's a steel drum. For other substrates, you'll notice a different letter there. We'll get into that a little bit later. Number 1 designates tight head, 2 indicates that it's an open head, and you also may see 6HA1 steel composite drums out there. This simply means that it's a steel drum outer with a plastic bottle inside. So the standards for steel drums, again, are found in the regulations, 49 CFR 178.504. Similarly, you can find the steel composite drums in the same chapter, but 522. We do have plants basically all around the US that produce these types of steel drums, and each of which is considered a remote test facility and has its own GBC identifier, so you know where that drum was tested and produced. Okay, plastic drums and jerry cans. So Greif has produced plastic drums for a number of years. Recently, we've begun producing jerry cans. They are constructed to hold both liquids and solids depending on the design. You'll notice the mark will start with a 1H1 for a tight head plastic drum and 1H2 for an open head, the same as with the steel. For a jerry can, the UN mark will start with a 3, but then again, the same nomenclature, H1 for tight head and H2 for an open head. Again, the H does stand for plastic. We do have plants all over the country that can make these drums, either by extrusion blow molding, injection molding, or a couple other different varieties of extrusion. Again, looking at plastic drum and jerry can standards like we did for steel, they're found in 49 CFR 178.509. We have places around the globe that can make these. Specifically in the US, we have plants on both the west and east coast that can make different varieties of jerry cans, plastic drums, anything under the sun. Similar to steel, each plant is identified by its city. You will find the standard GBC mark on all of our plastic containers rather than individually identified numbers. The city where the drum was produced will be indicated on the sidewall somewhere near the UN marking. Fiber drums, also one of the older types of packaging that Greif produces. They are constructed and tested to contain solids only. Drum is made out of paper, so it has a hard time containing liquid. You can understand why. We do not test or produce them to hold hazardous liquids. The mark, again, will be a 1G, which is different from the last plastic and steel ones, the G indicating that it is made from fiberboard. We make a variety of different brand names when it comes to fiber drums, lock rim styles with traditional metal chimes. We make an all-fi that has a fiberboard top, no metal or plastic at all. And we also make Rokon, which are square-looking drums. They will not have a metal chime either. So a little bit about fiber drum standards. Again, the 49 CFR reference is there for you to review if you would like. The standards are a little bit different compared to plastic and steel, mostly because it's a paper product. So I would encourage you, if you have interest, to go review that. Each plant, again, is identified by a city. Like with plastic, it is not an individually identified GBC number since they are not tested at remote facilities. In general, fiber drums can include multiple types of materials in the body and are on the heads of the drum, but they're mostly paper. At the end of the day, that's how they're considered by the regulations. Combination packaging. So one of the newer additions to Greif's portfolio are combination packagings, which are defined as one or more inner packaging secured in a non-bulk outer. So the type that Greif produces are typically just fiberboard boxes with plastic inner receptacles, and they can be constructed and tested to hold solid and liquid hazardous materials. The UN mark for these will start with a 4G, with the G designating that the outer is made of paper. Like other packaging, fiberboard box and combination packaging standards can be found in 49 CFR. The reference is 178.516. It will include the requirements for this type of combination packaging and give you a little bit of information on what needs to be included in the design in order to be compliant. Greif does have production plants located in strategic parts of the U.S. for combination packagings, typically located in the Midwest, South, and East. Okay, the last type of packaging that Greif produces is rigid intermediate bulk containers. Our IBCs are constructed and tested to hold liquids only, mostly because it is very difficult to get solids into an IBC that Greif produces through a very small 6-inch cap. So the UN mark on an IBC was a little bit different. It'll start with 31HA1. 31 indicates that the IBC is designed for liquids or solids. In this case, H designates that it's a plastic receptacle on the inside with a steel structural cage on the outside. That's the A that follows it. And the number 1 designates that it's a non-removable head or a tight head with a very small opening. Given that it's liquid rated, this makes more sense. A little bit about rigid composite IBC standards. Again, they can be found in the 49 CFR along with all the other packaging types. The reference is 178.807. A couple of things to point out. We do have to have a few items on the inner receptacle as called out by the regulations. We need to include the design type for the IBC, which you'll see here in the photo, along with the manufacturer of the bottle, so that if that bottle were to separate itself from the steel cage, it can still be identified. On the outside steel cage, we have to have a durable label with a complete UN mark that we'll explain in a little bit. It has to be applied to the front face of the unit. So a little bit about UN marks in general. I mentioned before that all of our packaging is designed, tested, and rated to hold dangerous goods. The way that we indicate that is with what's called a UN mark. So each mark on packaging that is intended to hold dangerous goods must have this. 49 CFR 178.3, it provides guidance on the size of the UN mark, namely that the letters and numbers have to be 12 millimeters in height. The letters, numbers, and symbols must be legible and of sufficient contrast for all UN mark containers. Segments must be separated with slashes, as I'll show you on the next page. They cannot have any missing segments, and the correct sequence must be followed. So here's a visualization and breakdown of a liquid rated UN mark. So I mentioned earlier we have several types of packagings that are intended to contain liquids, and this is what it'll look like. In this case, this is a steel drum intended to contain liquids. I won't go through all the different options and numbers on the screen, but a couple things to point out. You do see that 1A1 that indicates that it's a steel drum tight head. You see the X, which means that it's intended to contain packaging groups 1, 2, and 3. And that is followed by the max relative density that it is rated for. So the product, in this case, cannot exceed 1.8 specific gravity. The other number that I'll point out is the 300 there. That is for the hydrostatic pressure that the drum has been successfully tested to. So it gives the customer an idea of what types of vapor pressure is appropriate for the packaging. Okay, looking at a solid mark, again, you'll see a lot of similarities here, but some differences that I'll point out. Again, it's a 1A indicating that it's a steel drum, but the 2 indicates that it's an open top. This makes a lot of sense given that it's for a solid material. You can open the top, put the material in, remove the top to remove the material at the end site. So you again have a packaging group. In this case, it's a Y, but it's followed this time by a gross mass number. So this means that the package is rated and tested to hold up to 300 kilograms in terms of gross mass. How you know it's rated for solid is that's followed by an S. This won't be seen on a liquid UN mark. Instead, it will have a hydrostatic rating, but in this case, it'll be an S. All right, looking at the UN mark for an IBC, again, you see at the beginning an indication of the IBC design type with the 31HA1. There's a lot in a UN mark for an IBC that isn't included with the liquid or solid non-bulk marks. But looking at this one, I'll point out a couple of things. One is the permissible gross mass. That's critical to understand how much the IBC can handle from a weight perspective. The other thing that follows it in the UN mark is the rated capacity. So from a volume perspective, that's the maximum amount of liquid that can go in the IBC safely. So the last UN mark that we have within the Greif portfolio is a fiberboard box combination packaging. So it'll look a lot more similar to some of the solid ratings that we have. So you'll have a 4 here indicating that the outer is a box made of fiberboard. The packaging group in this case, again, is Y, X, or Z. So in this case, it's Y. Again, like a solid rated drum, the gross mass package and its contents is listed out there like it would be a solid rated drum. But the S also can denote that it contains inner packagings, and in this case, that is true. So in closing, UNDOT marks are critical when it comes to transporting dangerous goods so that the end user knows what the packaging is rated for and is able to comply with federal regulations. Every packaging that we produce that is in fact UN rated must follow 49 CFR 178-503 in order to properly identify the UN performance of that specific construction. So if you see a UN mark on a drum and you don't understand what it means, please feel free to reach out to any member of the compliance team or ask your supervisor to connect you with the appropriate person. I think at the end of the day, what we produce transports dangerous things every day. So the fact that we have so many people involved in the production of it means that we have to be especially mindful of understanding what it means to produce dangerous goods packaging.